To understand Mars in the fourth house, first we will review what the fourth house symbolizes and then what Mars symbolizes. Then we can put those two together in a very intuitive, simple, but intelligent way. So to begin with, here's the fourth house. What is it actually? It's actually the spot in the sky that's right under your feet. It's like the midnight sky, the underground sky. And that is why it represents everything that it represents. That's why it's all about emotions. It's the house of happiness, mental health, peace of mind. It's also all about what's inside your heart. So it's about what you love, your quality of your love, your devotion, and so forth. Underground also means the part that you don't see. It's the sky that you don't see, right? It's underneath the earth. So it has to do with private things. So that's why it's the house of shyness, how much you keep yourself private, how modest you are, etc. And it's about your home because your home is your private space where you keep your private stuff and where it's safe and peaceful and where you can sleep and rest. The other thing about the ground beneath your feet is that the plants put their roots into it, and that's what gives them stability. The ground beneath our feet holds us up, makes us stable. The fourth house represents stability. And roots also represents ancestry. But it has to do with family, culture, roots, the things that have brought us up into being. And finally, the fourth house is the extremely feminine house because femininity is the internal gender. And so it's not really extroverted at all. It's quite introversive, introspective, and feminine. Now, if we compare that with Mars, we'll understand what Mars in the fourth house represents. So let's quickly review what Mars represents. Mars is masculinity. And masculinity has two essential symbolisms to it. One is independence, and the other is inception. So Mars is the planet that symbolizes individuality, independence, freedom. Therefore, self-reliance. Therefore, strength. And the things which make us strong. Muscles, tools, weapons, technologies, machines. Finally, because Mars is so independent, it gets into conflict with other independent beings. It's not cooperative, it's individualistic. So it signifies conflict, competition, competitors, contests, clashing, fighting. The masculinity is inceptive, so Mars represents initiative, ambition. Therefore, it's passionate, it's hungry, it's lusty, it's eager. Therefore, it's brave, it's ready to take risks, it's courageous, and it's confident. Because it's confident, it takes command. Because it can make decisions and make commitments. Now, how does that compare with what the fourth house represents? When we understand that, we will really be able to clearly, intelligently, and intuitively know what Mars in the fourth house represents. And also, not just what Mars in the fourth house represents, but what it basically means, and therefore how it would be modified by the circumstances of the chart in which it exists. So let's take a look at this. Mars is the planet of masculinity. The fourth house is the planet of femininity. We better keep that in mind when we're interpreting how Mars will do in the fourth house. Another thing we have to keep our mind on is that Mars is all about initiative and ambition, while the fourth house is all about rest, peace, safety. So Mars is risky and initiative, ambitious, but the fourth house is very cautious, safe, peaceful, quiet. So there's a clash between ambition and peace. And thirdly, Mars is all about individuality, whereas the fourth house is very group-oriented because it has to do with ancestry. So let's call this a clash between freedom and culture. In other words, it's a clash between the individual and the group. Freedom of the individual versus the values of the group or the culture. Now that we have these three key points of how Mars interacts with the fourth house, we can color in the picture a bit more. We could fill out the picture a bit more. So because Mars is masculine and the fourth house is feminine, Mars in the fourth house signifies gender atypicality. So the behaviors of the base gender are not the way this person behaves, even though they belong to that gender. Exactly what that means differs based on exactly what kind of chart Mars is in the fourth house. So another way of expressing this is the quote, the right thing in the wrong place, or having inappropriate timing, because that's how it will often play out. Each gender has its own strengths and weaknesses. If you mix them, like in Mars in the fourth house, then you can get masculinity where femininity was desired or appropriate, and femininity where masculinity was desired or appropriate. So you can get the right thing in the wrong place, or conversely, in good conditions, you can get the ability to use something inappropriate to use it effectively. We will look at some people that actually have Mars in the fourth house, and this gender atypicality will become more clear when you look at actual cases of it. The next thing about Mars in the fourth house is that Mars is ambitious, but the fourth house is very peaceful. So this is why people with Mars in the fourth house have excessive ambition, and this is probably the trademark. A lot of ambition. By which I mean big desires, big goals, big aspirations. Therefore, this person is usually not easy to satisfy or to calm down or placate. Whether you're trying to satisfy them or they're trying to satisfy themselves. Because they have a lot of hunger, and that hunger doesn't really let them come to peace or rest. It keeps driving them forward. And therefore, they often have difficulty sleeping or just relaxing or shutting down, chilling out. They'll get scared or nervous or uncomfortable when there's nothing to do. Finally, we had the clash between Mars being individualistic and the fourth house being group-oriented, which we expressed as a clash of freedom versus culture. So this is why people with Mars in the fourth house are rebellious. This is what we expect from Mars in the fourth house, rebelliousness. The individual will come away from the group, will depart from the group, will be different from the group. So the group will perceive the individual as a rebel. This individual can therefore change their group. They can alter their culture. They can change traditions. And since they like to leave the group, they tend to have interest in foreigners. They tend to get along well with foreigners. They like foreign situations. They go to foreign places. They adopt foreign ways. One example of a person with Mars in the fourth house is Boy George. Here's a clear picture of gender atypicality. Also extremely ambitious. Also extremely rebellious. Another well-known person with Mars in the fourth house, Russell Brand. Gender atypicality, you could see it a bit, but also he's very big on being kind of blunt on sophisticated things. Or things where people are trying to hem and haw and beat around the bush. He'll come right up and be blunt about it. He's really blunt and in your face. So that's the idea of taking the thing which is inappropriate but still making it work, which is really making male things work in female contexts. He's also extremely ambitious and also extremely rebellious. Another well-known person is Michaelangelo. Sexually atypical, whether homosexual or asexual, but definitely sexually atypical. So that's his version of gender atypicality. Extremely ambitious. He's trying to invent great things and create great things. And extremely rebellious. Very rebellious person. Finally, another example of Mars in the fourth house is Elizabeth Taylor. Her gender atypicality is how masculine she was. And very outgoing, very bold, very dominant. She's also extremely ambitious, and she's also extremely rebellious in the changing of the trends and changing of the values of the society that she's from. Let's take a look at Russell Brand. Why is he able to make the gender atypicality work for him? So he's able to take male things and use them in female settings. without breaking the pottery like a bull in a china shop. He is a bull in a china shop, but the pottery benefits from it. So why is that? As I said, this is the baseline of Mars in the 4th house, but it depends on what chart it's in. So what chart is it in for Russell Brand? Well, first of all, he has Mars in the 4th house in Aries. So that means it's the 4th lord in the 4th house. The lord of a house is in its own house, and that house doesn't suffer. The house prospers. It's protected by the owner. So although in a theory, Mars in the 4th house kind of clashes with the 4th house, also in theory, the 4th lord in the 4th house benefits the 4th house. So he has both things going on. And his Mars, being the 4th lord, is exactly aspecting his Saturn, which is the 1st lord, which is exactly aspecting that Mars back. So there's a mutual aspect between Mars and Saturn, which is a mutual aspect between the 1st and the 4th lord, which is a Raj Yoga. So his Mars in the 4th house is not only his 4th lord, but it's also in Raj Yoga, which means the best combination, the best alignment of things. Furthermore, it's with Jupiter and the moon. This is why his Mars in the 4th house, he has all his qualities of Mars in the 4th house, but they all take a positive slant and make him somebody that people like, not somebody that's annoying or uncooperative. Even though he is annoying and uncooperative, etc., we like that. And Michaelangelo, since he's such a great artist, we might be tempted to say, well, Michaelangelo has Mars in the 4th house, so Mars in the 4th house must mean you're an artist. But it doesn't. It comes from other things. On his chart, his 1st lord is in the 3rd house, along with Mercury. So it's putting a lot of emphasis on the creative side of the 3rd house, which means the creative use of the hands. But Mercury is the 10th lord, and Jupiter is the 1st lord. So their combination makes Raja Yoga in the 3rd house, which is the house of skill and talent. Then his 3rd lord, Saturn, aspects his 11th lord in the 5th house. So those are the 3 key points for artists: the 3rd house, the 5th house, the 11th house. If you watch all of my videos, you'll see every time I mention an artist, I point out those 3 houses. And they always have these combinations between them. So in his case, his 3rd lord aspects his 11th lord, which is in his 5th house. He's a fantastic artist. That indicates a fantastic artist. So for Michaelangelo, everything about Mars in the 4th house is true, but subordinate to the fact that he's a great artist. The first thing we think about Michaelangelo is he's an artist, not he's a rebel, or not he's sexually atypical. It may be the 2nd or 3rd or 5th or 12th thing that we think about him. And that's, the chart shows that. The loudest thing in the chart is that he's an amazing artist, and then also that he's rebellious, etc. If you want to actually have my interpretations for all of your placements in your chart, you can go to my website and order that from the charts page. It's victorcara.com/R2. Thank you so much.